The crash of water against drywall was deafening. I had barely stepped into my office when the pipe finally gave way, sending torrents of icy water streaming across the hardwood floors. My perfectly curated home office, my sanctuary, my little kingdom, was disappearing under a tide of chaos. Books, files, awards, even the framed photograph of Alex and me on our last vacation, all were soaking, floating like debris in a small, domestic flood. For a moment, I just stood there, soaked and blinking against the spray, trying to process the smell of wet paper and mildew, the metallic tang of bent hardware. Everything I had spent years collecting, certificates of achievement, fancy organizing tools, pristine furniture, was vanishing before my eyes. And then, something strange happened. I laughed. A dry, incredulous laugh that felt almost foreign. It wasn't the kind of laughter that comes from humor. It was deeper, purifying. For years, I had clung to the image of the perfect life with Alex. The polished home, the social appearances, the meticulous spreadsheets that tracked every indulgence and expense, not because I needed them, but because he expected me to. And suddenly, standing in a puddle of my own life, I realized how hollow it all was. The water had done more than destroy, it had cleared. I could see, with a terrifying clarity, that my devotion to a facade had nearly consumed me. Every careful email I sent, every meticulous plan for social events, every smile I painted on for Alex's sake. It had all been a performance, and I had been both the actress and the prisoner. I dropped to my knees and pressed my hands against the warped floorboards, letting the cold soak through my skin. I could feel the old me, the anxious, calculating me, slipping away, carried off by the current of truth I'd been avoiding. And in that vacuum, a new version of myself emerged, deliberate, fearless, uncompromising. I would rebuild. Not my office. Not my image. Me. By the time I had climbed out, soaked from head to toe and shivering, I had a plan. Alex had been the center of my orbit for far too long. I had allowed his secrets, his pretense, his ambitions, to define my life. But I wasn't going to let it happen anymore. If his public charm masked private deceit, I would find the cracks. I would see what he was hiding, and I would dismantle the illusion piece by piece. I didn't even have to think about it twice. My business skills, honed over years of organizing other people's chaos, were suddenly mine to turn inward. If I could track, catalog, and scrutinize other people's lives professionally, why not use those tools on the one person who had manipulated me most? Alex's finances, his properties, his habits. If there was a secret hiding in plain sight, I would uncover it. I stood, water dripping from my hair, and looked at the ruined room. For the first time in years, it felt like freedom. The mess around me wasn't destruction. It was invitation. A beginning. And as I slipped my wet phone into my pocket, I knew that the next steps I took would not just expose Alex. They would define me. I was reborn. No more pretense. No more compromise. Just truth. And nothing in the world would stop me from finding it. The moment I sat down at my laptop, I felt a surge of purpose I hadn't experienced in years. The water-damaged office was still a disaster, but it no longer mattered. Everything I once thought was important, the awards, the furniture, the spotless desk, was irrelevant. What mattered now was truth. And the first place I could find it was in Alex's finances. I started with the obvious: his public spending. Campaign events, donations, charity functions, all neatly documented, all visible to the electorate. But my instincts told me the lies hide in the details. The unreported patterns, the small anomalies that no one ever checks because they're too dull, too mundane. I had spent years mastering the art of organization. If anyone could read between the numbers, it was me. Hours passed. Receipts blurred into statements, statements into spreadsheets. Every line was a breadcrumb, a hint of what might be lurking behind polished facades. Then I saw it. A recurring payment labeled simply as property management fees. It wasn't an outrageous sum, just enough to blend in with his other expenses, but the address associated with it was peculiar. A district I'd never been to. A building that didn't appear in any of the public records I could access. Curiosity and a growing pulse of anger pushed me forward. I traced every transaction, cross-referencing dates, amounts, and vendors. The more I dug, the clearer the picture became. This was not a random rental or a business expense. This was deliberate, hidden. And someone somewhere was benefiting from it, someone who wasn't me. I couldn't help but think of Alex, smiling in photos, charming constituents, whispering promises in private. How many lies had he layered on top of the truth to protect himself? How long had I been blinded by the glitter of perfection? The city map on my screen became a blueprint. The unfamiliar district loomed like a challenge, a puzzle waiting for me to solve. I noted the building's name and location, memorized nearby streets, and considered how best to approach it. I needed to see it with my own eyes. Numbers could tell part of the story, but only a direct look would reveal its full depth. And then there was the human factor. Cassandra, Alex's chief of staff, the one who always seemed just a little too present at odd hours. The thought of her, quietly orchestrating parts of Alex's life behind the scenes, set my teeth on edge. Whoever she was collaborating with, it wasn't me. And now I had a chance to find out exactly what they were planning. I leaned back, eyes scanning the spreadsheets once more. Every line of financial data felt heavier now, like it carried a secret pulse I could almost hear if I listened closely enough. And I did. I could hear it. The soft, insistent rhythm of deception hiding in plain sight, waiting for me to uncover it. A cold sense of determination settled over me. I wasn't the passive observer anymore. I wasn't the woman who kept score for appearances or smiled through Alex's subtle manipulations. I was an investigator now, and every detail, every payment, every address was a thread I could pull until the whole fabric unraveled. I printed the relevant statements, carefully highlighted the suspicious payments, and tucked them into a folder. Each page felt like a stepping stone into the truth, each line a key to understanding the man I thought I knew. By the time night fell, I had my plan. I would go to the address myself. I would see what Alex and Cassandra were hiding. I didn't know exactly what I would find, but I didn't need to. Whatever was behind that door, I was ready. Because for the first time in my life, I was ready to put myself first. To uncover the lies. To take control. The rebirth had begun in the ruins of my office, and now it was spreading into every corner of my life. Alex had built a world of deception, but I was about to tear it down. I had walked past that district dozens of times in my life, never thinking it would matter. Now, every street felt like a stage for secrets. The building itself was sleek, modern, almost anonymous among the other condos and offices, yet I could sense the weight of careful concealment in its perfectly mirrored windows. Whoever lived here didn't want to be found. I lingered at the entrance, pretending to read the directory, the folder of statements pressed against my chest like armor. I had rehearsed my cover story in my mind countless times. I'm the new organizer assigned to update records and catalog inventory. Professional. Convincing. No one would suspect a thing. And I needed them not to. The lobby was empty except for a concierge who barely glanced up. I flashed a polite smile, introduced myself as the organizer, and requested access. His nod was almost dismissive, but effective enough. I was in. Every step I took echoed in the polished marble corridors, each echo a reminder that I was trespassing not just physically, but into Alex's carefully constructed private life. The condo itself was half-furnished. Tasteful, sterile, almost clinical in its perfection. Nothing here screamed the chaos of ordinary life. Yet small signs of occupancy whispered their secrets. A jacket draped over the back of a chair, a mug still warm on the counter, faint traces of someone's scent lingering in the air. This wasn't just a hideaway, it was a home in progress, a deliberate space designed for intimacy and secrecy. I started cataloging, mentally taking note of furniture placement, decorative choices, anything that could hint at who occupied this space. But it wasn't until I opened a drawer in the office that my pulse hit a steady, sharp rhythm of confirmation. There it was, a receipt for a new piece of artwork. The handwriting was unmistakable, the signature unmistakable. Alex and Cassandra. The note, casual yet intimate, read, "For our new home office." Love, see. My stomach churned as the reality settled over me like ice water. This wasn't a fleeting affair. It wasn't just hidden meetings in hotels or secret dinners. This was planned, domestic, deliberate. They were building a life together, under my nose, under everyone's eyes, and all for the sake of Alex's political image. I carefully examined the rest of the office, finding evidence of shared spaces, dual-purpose items, the subtle overlaps of two lives intertwined. The furniture, the organization, the little personal touches, it all screamed collaboration, intimacy, and the quiet certainty of ownership. Alex and Cassandra weren't just hiding a fling. They were orchestrating a partnership that would stabilize him politically while excluding me entirely. A mixture of rage and clarity surged through me. I felt my rebirth crystallizing in that moment. This wasn't just personal betrayal. This was deception on a scale I could leverage. Every careful spreadsheet, every payment, every seemingly mundane detail I had tracked now carried explosive potential. I slipped the receipt and note into my folder, tucking them between the financial statements I had brought. I took one last sweep of the condo, capturing every hint, every shadow, every trace of their secret life. Then, quietly, I exited the way I had come, my heart steady, my mind sharper than ever. Back in the car, I didn't allow myself a single pang of doubt or regret. I had witnessed the truth, and now it belonged to me. Alex's facade, polished for the public, was cracking, and I held the evidence. Cassandra had unknowingly given me the key. The path forward was clear. I would not let this betrayal be merely a wound. It would be my weapon. My rebirth was no longer just about personal liberation. It was about exposing the lies, dismantling the carefully constructed image of power, and reclaiming control over my own life. And I knew exactly where it would lead, straight into the hands of Finn O'Connell. Back in my newly chaotic office, I spread everything across the table: financial statements, receipts, notes, and photographs I had taken at the condo. The folder I had carried like armor on my investigation was no longer enough. This was bigger. This needed precision. Professionalism. A presentation so clear that no one, not even Finn, could ignore it. I felt a thrill of control I hadn't experienced in years. Organizing wasn't just my skill, it was my weapon. Every line of data, every piece of evidence, had to be arranged to tell a story that left no room for doubt. I could almost hear the smugness of Alex, imagining himself untouchable, and it fueled my determination. I sorted the documents into categories: financial anomalies, property details, and correspondence evidence. I highlighted the repeated property management fees, traced the payments, and cross-referenced them with a condo address. Each notation was precise, deliberate, and professional, leaving no ambiguity. Next came the photographs and the condo receipts. I labeled them clearly: evidence of hidden property, receipt indicating domestic arrangement, and Cassandra involvement. Every page was meticulously annotated with dates, locations, and context. I wanted the binder to read like a roadmap to the truth, not just a collection of haphazard notes. As I worked, I realized something powerful. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. Alex had manipulated not only me but the system itself. His charm, his calculated generosity, his public persona, all were designed to conceal deception, and I was about to expose it. Each meticulous entry in the binder became more than evidence. It became a symbol of my rebirth, my clarity, and my refusal to be ignored. I paused and ran my fingers over the stack of documents. The weight of it felt almost tangible. In that moment, I understood something I had known intellectually, but never emotionally. Knowledge is power. And this binder? This was pure, undeniable power. It was the culmination of my years of skills applied not for someone else's benefit, but for mine, and for the truth. Finally, I added a cover sheet: bold, precise, professional, confidential, evidence of misuse of campaign funds and concealed relationship. I imagined Finn opening it, the pages crisp, the story unfolding with such clarity that no one could question its veracity. I didn't need theatrics or drama. The truth, presented correctly, had all the drama it required. I looked around the office, at the ruined furniture, the damp walls, the small puddles still clinging stubbornly to the floor. None of that mattered anymore. The chaos had forged something stronger in me, a vision, a strategy, a reborn self capable of confronting not just Alex, but the corruption and manipulation he had woven into his life and career. I rehearsed my approach to Finn in my head. No need for unnecessary words or dramatics. Just the facts. Just the binder. Just the truth. He would see it immediately, and together we could take action that no one, not even Alex, could anticipate. As I closed the binder, sealing the pages with a quiet finality, I felt the weight of anticipation settle in my chest. Not fear, not anxiety, but a focused intensity. I had done the work. I had prepared the evidence. And now, all that remained was execution. Tomorrow, Finn O'Connell would receive this binder. And by the time he turned the first page, Alex's world, so carefully constructed, so polished, would begin to crumble. I allowed myself a small, private smile. This wasn't revenge, not exactly. It was reclamation of my life, of my power, of truth itself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready for whatever came next. The morning air was crisp as I drove toward Finn's office, the binder resting on the passenger seat like a loaded promise. My pulse thrummed with a mixture of anticipation and calm, an odd but welcome duality. I had rehearsed the meeting in my head countless times, how I would speak, how I would present the evidence, how I would remain composed. But nothing could have fully prepared me for the sensation of carrying the truth into the hands of someone who could act on it. Finn's office was understated, unlike Alex's polished and performative spaces. There were no grand displays, no calculated decor, just a room that breathed confidence. He greeted me with a firm handshake and a polite, curious smile. I noticed the subtle way he assessed me, probably trying to guess my purpose before I even opened my mouth. That would change in moments. I placed the binder on the desk. "Everything you need is here," I said, keeping my voice calm, controlled. Campaign funds, property management, personal correspondence, evidence of a secret property, an affair, and the misuse of resources that should have been public. His eyes widened slightly as he opened the binder. I didn't flinch. I had seen every page, traced every payment, examined every photograph, and now the power of it was radiating outward, shaping the room, shaping our futures. Finn flipped through the sections carefully, nodding silently as the story unfolded. He didn't need explanation beyond what the document showed. Each highlighted payment, each receipt, each annotation made the narrative clear. Alex's private ambitions were being funded and concealed using public resources. And the affair with Cassandra wasn't just scandalous. It was calculated, a strategic partnership designed to manipulate appearances and safeguard a political trajectory. "This is thorough," Finn said finally, his voice measured, but I sensed the growing intensity beneath the calm. "And verifiable. You've done your homework." I allowed a faint smile. "I always do." He leaned back, considering the implications. This could change everything. Alex's credibility, his campaign, the public's trust. And the law, misuse of funds, is serious. He glanced at me, an unspoken question in his eyes. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I met his gaze, unwavering. I want the truth to come out. I want the system to hold him accountable. And I want my life back, without lies in it. Finn nodded slowly, and I realized in that moment that we weren't just allies in exposing corruption. We were partners in a shared understanding of integrity and justice. The tension in the room shifted subtly, a quiet bond forming between two people who had decided that the truth was worth everything. By mid-afternoon, the first reports started surfacing. Alex's carefully constructed image, polished in press conferences and campaign ads, was cracking. Political pundits dissected the evidence. Colleagues whispered in disbelief. Social media exploded with speculation and outrage. The secret property, the financial irregularities, and the domestic arrangement that had been meant to stabilize him all now became a public spectacle. Through it all, I stayed in the background, watching with a strange sense of detachment and satisfaction. Alex's world was unraveling, not because of gossip, but because of undeniable facts. And as Finn moved quickly, ensuring the ethical and legal repercussions were handled correctly, I felt the weight of years of deception lift from my shoulders. By evening, the scandal had gained full momentum. Alex's allies were scrambling, journalists were digging, and the whispers of betrayal became a chorus that couldn't be silenced. I allowed myself a private moment of triumph, a quiet recognition that the rebirth that began in a flooded office had reached a turning point. It wasn't just about exposing Alex anymore. It was about reclaiming my power, my clarity, and my life. And as I finally leaned back, closing my eyes for a brief moment, I realized something extraordinary. In revealing his secrets, I had also revealed myself. Stronger, smarter, unstoppable. And this was only the beginning. The days after the scandal broke were a blur of headlines, interviews, and strategizing. Alex had become a cautionary tale overnight, his charm stripped away by the meticulous truth I had uncovered. And yet, in the eye of the storm, one constant anchored me: Finn. We met almost daily, poring over documents, preparing press releases, and ensuring that the revelations hit with maximum clarity and impact. He was methodical, disciplined, and relentless in his pursuit of ethical governance. Watching him work was intoxicating, not in a superficial, infatuated way, but in a recognition of competence and integrity that resonated deep inside me. For the first time in years, I felt that thrill of connection that wasn't tangled in deception or pretense. Our conversations often drifted beyond the scandal itself. We debated the nuances of political strategy, the ethics of transparency, even the small, mundane choices of daily life that reveal character. I found myself laughing freely, a sound that felt foreign and liberating. Finn's presence was grounding, his respect for the truth mirrored my own reborn values. There was no performance, no manipulation, only genuine, raw honesty. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of organizing evidence and preparing statements, we found ourselves alone in his office. The city lights cast long shadows across the walls, painting the room in muted golds and silvers. Finn leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly, and looked at me in a way that made my chest tighten, not with fear, not with anticipation, but with a warmth I couldn't easily define. "You've done incredible work, Simone," he said quietly, his voice steady but intimate. "I don't think anyone could have handled this with the precision and care you did." I met his gaze, feeling the weight of his admiration. "It wasn't just me," I admitted. "It was the truth. And the truth doesn't hide forever." He nodded, but there was something more in his expression, something unspoken. A subtle acknowledgement that in exposing Alex, we had forged something new, an unshakable trust. The air between us seemed charged, an unspoken electricity that neither of us fully addressed, but both of us felt. We returned to work, side by side, moving through folders, statements, and photographs, but every so often, our hands brushed over a document, our eyes met in a fleeting spark. Each glance, each touch, became a silent conversation, a delicate acknowledgement that the bond forming between us was undeniable. By the end of the week, the scandal had reached every corner of the city. Alex's political career was crumbling, his allies abandoning him, and the public's outrage escalating with each new revelation. And yet, in the midst of the chaos, Finn and I remained composed, united not just by strategy, but by a shared understanding that the fight for integrity could be as thrilling as it was just. One late night, as we closed the last folder for the day, Finn paused, his gaze softening. "Simone, I don't know if I've told you this," he began, hesitating just enough to make my heart skip, "but watching you handle this, seeing the way you move through challenges, it's inspiring." I felt a warmth rise in my chest, unanticipated yet welcome. "I think we make a good team," I said simply, but the truth behind my words ran deeper than professional respect. He smiled, that small, rare smile that softened the edges of his serious demeanor. And for a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to imagine more than collaboration. I imagined a partnership not built on deception or pretense, but on mutual respect, honesty, and shared purpose. The rebirth that had begun in my ruined office now extended beyond justice. It was personal, profound, and unexpectedly thrilling. And as I walked home that night, the city glowing softly around me, I realized that the most unexpected truth of all was blooming quietly between Finn and me. A partnership forged in ethics, fueled by intelligence, and perhaps, in time, something far more intimate. By now, the city was abuzz with Alex's scandal. Headlines screamed betrayal, misuse, and secret affairs. Social media was alight with debates, outrage, and speculation. But I wasn't watching from the sidelines. I was orchestrating the narrative with Finn, carefully guiding the exposure to ensure it landed where it mattered, where the truth couldn't be ignored. Each day brought new revelations, some uncovered by journalists, some by our meticulous documentation. The condo receipts, financial inconsistencies, and personal notes we had compiled became undeniable proof of Alex's deception. His carefully constructed persona was unraveling, and there was a peculiar satisfaction in knowing that every meticulous calculation, every spreadsheet I had scrutinized, was now dismantling the man who had deceived me for so long. Finn and I worked side by side, an unspoken rhythm guiding us. His efficiency complemented my organizational instincts, our skills meshing like the precise turning of gears in a well-oiled machine. We were no longer just professional allies. We were partners in a mission that felt larger than either of us individually. And somewhere in the intensity of strategy sessions and late-night planning, our partnership began to deepen. It wasn't abrupt or dramatic. It was subtle. The way Finn's hand lingered a fraction longer when passing me a document, the quiet moments when our eyes met over the edge of a folder, the unspoken understanding in a shared glance that said more than words ever could. The tension was electric but restrained, grounded in respect and admiration. I realized with a thrill that I had been starved for this: connection without manipulation, passion without deceit. The final piece fell into place when one of our legal contacts confirmed the misuse of campaign funds in relation to the condo. It wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was political and financial, and it carried serious consequences. Finn and I presented the evidence to the appropriate authorities, each page of the binder a hammer strike on the foundations Alex had built. Watching the fallout was surreal. Alex, once untouchable, was scrambling to control the narrative. His allies deserted him. His carefully curated social image cracked under scrutiny. And through it all, Finn and I remained steady, our professional synergy now inseparable from our growing trust. One evening, after a particularly long day of strategizing press statements and coordinating with investigators, we finally had a quiet moment. The office was empty, the city lights casting a soft glow through the windows. Finn turned to me, his gaze serious but warm, and for the first time, he let the guard drop entirely. "Simone," he said, voice low, "I don't know what I would have done without you. You handled this flawlessly. And you're remarkable." The words caught me off guard, but instead of retreating, I let myself absorb them. "We make a good team," I replied, smiling softly. The meaning went deeper than words, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had formed through chaos and truth. He stepped closer, just enough that I felt the heat of his presence. "More than that," he murmured. His hand brushed mine over the folder we'd been reviewing, a spark igniting in that simple touch. There was no pretense, no manipulation, just honesty and the quiet certainty of something real. I inhaled, steadying myself against the whirlwind of emotions. The scandal, the truth, the fall of facades, it had all led us here. And in that charged silence, I realized that this was more than professional alliance. It was trust, attraction, and a budding connection that neither of us had anticipated, but both desperately needed. The rebirth that had begun in the ruins of my office had matured. I wasn't just reclaiming my life from Alex's deception. I was stepping into something new, something alive. And as Finn's hand lingered against mine, the city lights reflecting off the windows, I allowed myself to hope that this partnership, political, professional, and perhaps personal, was only the beginning. The storm had passed. The truth was victorious. And in its aftermath, something far more personal and profound was quietly blooming between us. The morning air was crisp, carrying a sense of finality that I hadn't felt in years. Alex's scandal had reached its peak. Press conferences had been held, statements had been released, and the city was abuzz with the repercussions of his deception. His political career, once untouchable, was effectively over. And I, standing at the edge of it all, felt a sense of closure I hadn't anticipated. Finn and I walked through the quiet streets after delivering the final documents to the authorities, the weight of months of careful planning lifting from our shoulders. The binder that had started as a simple folder of evidence had become a symbol, not just of justice, but of my rebirth, of the life I had reclaimed from lies and pretense. "Simone," Finn said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence, "you were extraordinary through all of this. I've never seen anyone handle something so delicate, so explosive, with such precision and integrity." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. I only did what needed to be done. The truth was always there, waiting to be revealed. He looked at me differently, and I realized it was more than professional admiration. There was something in his gaze, respect, trust, and something tender, something that made my chest tighten with anticipation. I had felt it growing over the weeks, subtle and restrained, but undeniable. We paused in a quiet park near the city center, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze amplifying the rare stillness between us. Finn reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. The touch was electric, but gentle, intimate without force. "I'm glad you're here," he murmured. "I'm glad it's you who helped me see this through. I don't want this to end just because the scandal is over." My heart thudded in my chest. This was the moment, the culmination of months of upheaval, discovery, and rebirth. I had imagined many endings to this story, but none had felt this real, this honest. "Neither do I whispered, my voice steady despite the rush of emotion. He stepped closer, and our eyes met, speaking a language that words could never fully capture. All the fear, all the betrayal, all the careful orchestration of truth had led us to this fragile, perfect moment. I felt his hand cut my cheek, warm and steady, and in response, I reached up, resting my palm against his. And then he kissed me. It wasn't hurried or desperate. It was deliberate, patient, a gentle merging of two people who had weathered storms and emerged stronger. The kiss carried all the weight of months of deception unraveling, the triumph of truth, and the promise of something authentic between us. I felt the tension of the past dissolve, replaced by a calm certainty that this, Finn, the truth, this connection, was real. When we finally parted, I rested my forehead against his, breathing in the quiet intimacy of the moment. "So, this is what rebirth feels like," I murmured, a smile tugging at my lips. He chuckled softly, his hand still holding mine. "I think it's exactly what we both needed." The city stretched around us, vibrant and alive, but for once, I didn't feel lost in the chaos. I had survived betrayal, exposed lies, and reclaimed my life. And in the midst of it all, I had discovered something far more profound than victory over Alex's deception. I had discovered trust, partnership, and love that felt unshakable. As we walked away from the park, side by side, I knew this was only the beginning. A life built on truth, integrity, and shared purpose awaited us. And for the first time in years, I felt fully, completely, and irreversibly reborn.